The moment of threat, when fear is spoken out loud, when a threat changes the air in the room. Let me tell you something. There is a moment you never forget. A moment when words land so heavy that the room itself feels different. 1 second, everything is normal. The next second, the air tightens. Your chest feels smaller. Your thoughts slow down. Not because you are weak, but because your mind knows danger has just been spoken. A threat doesn't need to be loud to shake you. It only needs to be clear. And once it is said, nothing feels the same again. I'll take everything from you. The shock that freezes time. Those words don't just hit your ears. They hit your body. Time stretches. Silence grows louder than sound. You don't rush to answer because your mind is trying to catch up with what your heart already understands. This isn't just anger talking. This is control trying to dress itself as power. In moments like this, the imbalance becomes clear. One person believes fear gives them the upper hand. The other is standing at a line they never asked to face. Fear is a weapon. Why threats are meant to paralyze, threats are not meant to solve anything. They are meant to stop movement. They aim to freeze your thinking, shake your footing, and push you into panic. Fear works best when it makes you rush, explain, or beg. That's why threats come wrapped in pressure. If fear can control your reaction, it doesn't need to control the truth. And many people mistake that feeling for defeat when it is actually a signal that something important is being tested. The question that decides everything. Break or wake up? This is where the real choice appears. Not in court. Not in words. Inside you. Do you shrink under the weight of what was said? Or do you become aware? Do you let fear close your vision? Or do you see more clearly than ever before? Every life has moments like this. A boss, a partner, a system, a voice that tries to decide your ending for you. And in that moment, you either hand them control or you take your first step awake. When fear exposes truth instead of hiding it, here's what most people don't realize. Threats reveal more about the speaker than the target. When someone needs fear to feel strong, it tells you they are already losing ground. Calm people don't threaten. Steady people don't need to scare. Fear doesn't always hide the truth. Sometimes it shines a light on it. It shows you where the cracks are. Even when they try to look unbreakable, words that were meant to destroy but ended up revealing those words were meant to crush. But instead, they exposed intent, weakness, and desperation. The threat did not decide the ending. It only revealed the game being played. And once you see that clearly, fear no longer owns the moment. It becomes the beginning of something else entirely. Why people threaten when they're losing control. Threats are the last tool of someone running out of power. Let me tell you something important. Threats don't appear at the beginning of control. They appear at the end of it. When someone feels their grip slipping, they reach for fear. Not because it works well, but because nothing else is left. A threat is not confidence speaking. It is panic wearing a loud voice. People who feel steady don't need to scare others. They trust their position. When threats show up, it's often because the ground underneath them is already shaking. Loud voices don't mean strong positions. Volume strikes people. A raised voice can feel convincing in the moment. But loud doesn't mean right. It only means desperate to be heard. Think about real life. The person who is secure doesn't shout across the room. They speak once, and that's enough. Loud voices often hide weak footing. They try to drown out doubt with noise. But noise fades. Truth does not. Strong people don't threaten, weak people depend on it. This truth is hard to hear, but it matters. People who rely on threats need others to feel small so they can feel big. That is not strength. That is fear looking for cover. Strong people set limits. Weak people make threats. Strong people stand still. Weak people shake the room. If someone will scare you to feel important, they are already telling you more than they realize. Control and authority are not the same thing. There is a big difference between forcing behavior and earning respect. Force creates short obedience. Respect creates lasting order. Control demands fear. Respect earns trust. One collapses the moment pressure is removed. The other holds steady even when tested. Many people confuse control with leadership, but one relies on intimidation, while the other stands without it. Noise versus power. Why real strength is quiet. Real strength doesn't rush to prove itself. It doesn't explain endlessly. It doesn't shout warnings. It watches. It waits. It moves with care. People who are truly strong don't need attention. They don't need fear to do the talking for them. Quiet strength unsettles loud threats because it cannot be pushed easily. The cornered animal makes the most noise in nature. The loudest creature is often the one with no escape left. It growls, flails, and makes itself seem bigger than it is. Not because it's winning, but because it's trapped. Human behavior follows the same rule. When threats rise, it's often a sign that options are running out. When someone gets louder, ask yourself why. Volume is a clue. When noise increases, control usually decreases. And noticing that changes everything. The silent advantage. Why staying calm terrifies. Manipulator silence is not weakness. It's strategy. Silence scares people who depend on reactions. Calm removes their leverage. When you don't rush to respond, you take away their fuel. Silence gives you space to think. It gives you time to see clearly. And people who rely on pressure hate nothing more than patience. Calm doesn't mean surrender. It means choice. Explaining feeds manipulation. Observing starves it. The more you explain, the more material you hand over. Manipulation feeds on words. Observation feeds wisdom. When you stop defending every move, you start noticing patterns. And once you see patterns, control shifts. Not outwardly, internally. That's where real change begins. Arguing wastes energy. Preparation builds power. Arguments drain you. Preparation strengthens you. While one side burns energy trying to win a moment, the other quietly gets ready for the long road. Think of everyday life. The calm worker keeps notes. The reactive one keeps arguing. Over time, the difference becomes clear. Let me be clear. Panic feeds predators. Panic tells the wrong people that their tactic is working. Fear speeds you up when slowing down would protect you. Pressure pushes you to speak when silence would serve you better. Panic is loud. Calm is grounded. One exposes you. The other shields you. Silence as the eye of the storming, the middle of chaos. The center is still. That stillness doesn't stop the storm. It survives it. When you stay calm while pressure spins around you, you keep your footing. And that steadiness confuses anyone trying to shake you loose. Emotional reactions. Hand over control. Every sharp reply gives something away. Every rushed response opens a door. Calm closes doors without slamming them. It keeps your choices intact. When silence is already winning battles. You can't see. Some victories don't announce themselves. They quietly unfold while others underestimate your calm. The courtroom illusion. When confidence is just performance. Theater of confidence. Why courtrooms reward. Performance courtrooms are not just about facts. They are about presence. Some people rely on posture, tone, and certainty to appear right. They speak like the ending is already decided. But appearance is not proof. It is presentation. And presentation fades when facts begin to speak. False. Confidence and weaponized certainty. Some people speak with certainty to shut others down. Not to explain, but to intimidate. They use firmness as a shield. But certainty without truth cracks under pressure. It only holds while no one questions it. Speaking Loudly is not the same as being right. A raised voice doesn't add weight to weak claims. It only adds sound. Truth doesn't need volume. It stands on its own. Declaring victory doesn't mean you've earned it. Saying you've won doesn't make it so. Real outcomes don't care about bold claims. They care about proof. Premature confidence often reveals fear of what's coming next. Confidence as a costume. People wear to hide fearsome, wear certainty like armor. It looks strong from a distance. Up close, it's thin. And once tested, it bends. Noise is not evidence and never will. No matter how often it's repeated. Noise cannot replace proof. Sound fades. Facts stay dot when performance is mistaken for power. Many people fear performance because it looks convincing. But once you see the difference, the illusion loses its grip. The turning point, when preparation replaces panic, the inner shift. That changes the direction of everything. There comes a moment when survival thinking stops working, when reacting is no longer enough. This is the moment when something inside shifts. You stop asking, how do I get through this? And start asking, how do I handle this wisely? Fear narrows your vision. Focus widens it. This inner shift doesn't happen loudly. It happens quietly when you decide that panic will no longer lead your actions. That decision alone changes the direction of everything that follows. From fear to focus. From reaction to strategy. Fear makes you jump. Focus makes you choose. Reaction is fast but careless. Planning is calm and deliberate. Think about everyday life. When people panic, they send messages they regret. They speak without thinking. They rush without checking facts. Focus slows that down. It replaces emotional movement with clear steps. And that shift is where control quietly returns. This is where everything changes. This is where everything changes. Not because the other side suddenly becomes kind. Not because the pressure disappears. But because you stop feeding the chaos. You stop moving on impulse. You stop giving fear the steering wheel. This moment doesn't look dramatic. It looks calm. And that calm is powerful. Listening instead of reacting. Listening gives you information. Reacting gives you problems. When you listen, you hear what others reveal without realizing it. You notice patterns. You catch gaps. Restraint protects you from saying too much and doing too much. In many real-life situations, the person who listens ends up stronger than the one who speaks first. Why documenting everything is an act of self-respect. Writing things down isn't fear. It's care. It's saying, my experience matters. Dates, words, actions, details. These protect you later when memories blur and stories change. People who don't document rely on memory. People who do rely on facts. That difference matters. Letting systems work while others self-destruct. When you stop interfering emotionally, processes begin to do their job. Pressure makes some people careless. Patience lets patterns unfold. While others rush and trip over themselves, staying steady keeps you protective. Time has a way of exposing what noise tries to hide. You don't win wars by shouting, you win by planning. Shouting burns energy. Planning saves it. History shows this again and again. Calm thinking outlasts loud reactions every time. Preparation is quiet confidence. Preparation doesn't announce itself. It simply stands firm when tested, letting them reveal themselves when arrogance becomes a trap. Some people believe they are untouchable. That belief makes them careless. They speak too freely. They push too far. They assume no one is watching. But confidence without care becomes a trap. The higher someone places themselves, the harder they fall when their words don't match their actions. Overconfidence always reaches too far. When someone believes they can't be challenged, they stop checking themselves. They make bold moves without thinking them through. In daily life, this happens in offices, homes, and public spaces. The person who feels above limits often crosses them. And crossing limits leaves traces. Give someone enough rope and step back. You don't need to push. You don't need to trap. Just step back. When people overestimate their position, they reveal more than they should. Silence gives them room to speak freely. And often, that is all it takes. Silence versus self-incrimination. Restraint protects. Reckless speech exposes. When you stay quiet, you leave no marks. When others talk too much, they leave many. Silence isn't empty. It's observant. And it keeps you safe. You don't need revenge when the truth is patient. Revenge rushes. Truth waits. And waiting doesn't mean doing nothing. It means trusting that careless actions always surface. You don't need to strike back. You need to stay steady. What if doing less actually gives you more? Doing less can mean fewer mistakes, fewer words, fewer reactions. And sometimes less effort brings better outcomes than force ever could. Observation is a weapon few know. How to use watching quietly often reveals what pressure never could. The collapse of false power, the unraveling always starts. Small false strength rarely collapses all at once. It cracks slowly. A small lie here, a missed detail there. At first it looks harmless, but small cracks spread. And once they start, stopping them becomes harder with every step. Inconsistencies that can no longer be hidden stories begin to change. Details stop lining up. One statement contradicts another. People notice. Even if they don't speak, they see. And once doubt enters, it grows quietly. When contradictions turn into exposure, there comes a point when confusion turns into clarity. What once seemed powerful now looks careless. What once felt threatening now looks unstable. Exposure doesn't need drama. It only needs time. Lies demand constant maintenance. Truth does not. False stories need constant fixing. Truth stands on its own. One requires effort every day. The other does not. And over time, effort wears people down. A house built on intimidation has no foundation. Fear may hold things together for a while, but it cannot support weight. When pressure increases, structures built on fear collapse inward. What isn't real can't last, no matter how loud it looks. No matter how firm it sounds, false power fades. It always does. The moment fear turns into understanding, fear loses its grip the moment you see clearly. Understanding replaces it with calm. What false power have you been afraid of? Once you see it clearly, it no longer controls you. When the threat backfires, when the threat stops being a weapon and starts being evidence at first. A threat feels sharp. It feels dangerous. But something changes when words are recorded, repeated, and remembered. What was meant to scare becomes proof. What was meant to silence becomes something that speaks louder than the person who said it. Many people don't realize this in the moment. They think words disappear once spoken. They don't. They linger. And once they exist, they can no longer be controlled. The bully doesn't. Realize they've become the exhibit. People who rely on pressure often forget one thing. They're being watched. Every outburst, every threat, every harsh word adds another layer. What they see as strength starts to look like instability. The focus shifts. Suddenly, the one who was meant to be afraid is no longer the center. The behavior becomes the focus, and that shift changes everything. Words, spoken in arrogance, leave a paper trail. Careless words don't vanish. They stack up. Messages, statements, promises made in anger. Over time, these words form a pattern, and patterns tell stories. Many people lose ground not because of actions alone, but because of what they said when they thought no one would hold them to it. Listen carefully. What you say in anger follows you. Listen carefully. Words spoken in heat don't stay in that moment. They travel. They repeat themselves. They resurface when least expected. Anger makes people forget the future, but the future remembers. Every sentence spoken without care becomes something that can't be taken back. Boomerang. Threats always return. A threat thrown outward doesn't disappear. It curves back. Not always quickly, not always loudly, but it returns. Words meant to harm often circle back as consequences. That's why restraint matters. Not because it looks good, but because it protects you later. Power misused always exposes itself. Pressure applied without care reveals cracks. Fear-based control shows its limits under time. What looks forceful today can look careless tomorrow. And once exposed, it cannot hide again. Why restraint is the strongest form of protection. Restraint keeps you clean. It keeps your hands steady. It keeps your path clear while others leave marks behind. Redefining winning. Winning is not about destroying someone else. Many people grow up believing winning means taking something away, beating someone, leaving them with nothing. But that kind of victory is short. It doesn't last, and it often costs more than it gives. True winning doesn't require someone else to lose everything. Freedom, clarity, and dignity as the new scorecard. Winning can look quieter than expected. It can mean sleeping peacefully, thinking clearly, standing without shame. These things don't make noise, but they matter. When fear no longer rules your thoughts, you've already gained more than most battles ever give. Taking everything versus losing standing. Some people focus on taking money, taking space, taking control. But in doing so, they often lose how others see them. And once that's gone, it's hard to recover. Empty victories don't age well. What does winning really look like to you? Is it noise or is it calm? Is it chaos or is it peace? The answer changes how you move forward. Silent victories that last forever. Some wins don't need witnesses. They don't need announcements. They show up in stability, safety, and self-respect. And those wins last. Survival is success when the odds were against you. Standing after pressure is not small. It means something. It means strength held. Peace is the highest form of power when fear no longer controls you. You have already won. The aftermath. Strength that doesn't need permission. The quiet rebuilding that happens after the storm, after the noise fades. Rebuilding begins. Not loudly, not quickly, but steadily. Piece by piece, you regain balance. You trust your steps again. You breathe without tension. Growth after pressure is often quiet, but it is real. Confidence rebuilt from the inside out. Strength rebuilt from within doesn't depend on approval. It doesn't wait to be noticed. It stands on understanding earned through experience. Fear once shaped decisions. Now clarity does. Reclaiming identity without apology. You don't owe explanations for surviving. You don't owe softness to those who tried to break you. Knowing who you are again is enough. You don't need approval from someone who tried to destroy you. People who tried to control you don't get to define your worth. Their voice no longer matters. Fire doesn't ask permission to burn. Brighter growth doesn't ask for agreement. It simply happens. You are still standing, and that matters. Still standing. Still moving. Still here. That matters more than words can say. What part of you is stronger now? The answer to that question is the real ending. Lessons for anyone facing intimidation. Stop arguing with threats. They're not meant to be solved. Here's the truth. Threats are not problems to fix. They are tests of patience, observation, and control. Arguing with someone who wants to scare you only hands them power. You might think defending yourself will change their mind, but it rarely does. The moment you engage emotionally, you step into their arena. Instead, step back, observe, stay steady. Let the words hit and pass. Let your calm be louder than their anger. That shift alone changes the game. Document, prepare, observe. The real defense plan when faced with intimidation Taking notes is not fear, it's preparation. Recording facts, dates, and events keeps your footing firm. Watching carefully without reacting lets you understand patterns. Preparation protects you from surprises. Observation informs your choices. These small, deliberate steps give you control. They keep you grounded while chaos surrounds others. Every wise person knows knowledge is power, calm is armor. Emotional defense drains you, strategic defense protects you, reacting emotionally is exhausting. It uses energy and leaves openings. Strategic defense is quiet, deliberate, and effective. It doesn't show panic. It doesn't feed threats. Instead, it safeguards your mind and actions. Think of life like a storm. Those who rush into it struggle. Those who plan quietly weather it with far less struggle. Choose where you place your energy. It matters more than you think. Stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Some people will never understand you. No amount of explanation changes that. Trying only gives them more material to twist or dismiss. The strong stop explaining to those determined to misjudge. They conserve energy. They focus on actions, not words. You can live your truth without permission or validation from those who don't want it. Chess, not checkers. Thinking 3 moves ahead life isn't simple. Every step has consequences. Threats often make people react like they are playing checkers, fast, reactive, short-sighted. Thinking 3 moves ahead is like playing chess. You anticipate mistakes, notice traps, and act with foresight. It doesn't guarantee ease, but it guarantees readiness. Calm is dominance, not submission. The quiet mind carries strength the loudest voices can't touch. Calm does not mean giving in. Calm shows control. Calm turns panic into opportunity. And that calm, steady presence, more than words or threats, often decides outcomes. Final message. The nightmare was never yours when the threat fails to define the ending. A threat only exists while you give it power. The moment you see clearly, it loses its hold. Your life is not defined by someone else's words. The ending is not theirs to write. Every pressure-filled moment carries a choice. Let it rule you or see through it and act with clarity. The nightmare was never yours. It was a story someone else tried to force upon you. He said he'd take everything. But he didn't listen closely. He said he'd take everything. But he didn't. Words were loud. Threats were sharp. Promises of destruction were made. Yet here you are, still standing, still thinking, still in control. Repeating it reminds you of the truth. Threats speak louder about the speaker than the target. Fear didn't win truth. Did fear may have tried to guide your actions, but it didn't succeed. Truth, clarity, and patience did. While panic seeks to control, understanding protects. While intimidation tries to erase confidence, truth restores it. Fear is temporary. Truth is permanent. Taking back the story that was never theirs to control. They tried to own your story. They tried to define your life by their anger and promises. But stories only have power when you allow them. Reclaim your narrative. Live with integrity. Walk forward knowing the past cannot dictate your future unless you give it permission. What threat have you been believing? Ask yourself honestly, what have you been letting scare you? What words have you treated as more powerful than they were? Recognition is the first step. Awareness gives you a choice. Once you see the illusion, you are free to act with calm and confidence. You don't need to fight louder. You need to stand firmer. Strength is not about raising your voice. It's about planting your feet. It's about moving steadily while chaos swirls around you. Standing firm, grounded in your truth, gives more power than yelling ever could. Stand firm, and the world will notice.